know the population standard deviation. We don't know sigma. And so we don't know sigma, we can't use the standard normal distribution. Instead, we have to use the t distribution, the student's t model. And it's just like the standard normal distribution. It's similar. It's symmetric, it's bell-shaped, but it's got a little thicker tails. And so as you increase n, though, it becomes more and more like the normal distribution. Okay? So let's talk about how to find critical t values. And so 90% when n equals 5. Well, I can't do what I did yesterday and go look at the 90% and see 1.645. No, what I have to do today is I have to figure out first, I'm going to figure out the degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is n minus 1. Okay? Next, I could either use a t-table or I could use my calculator. How do I use a t-table? Well, what I'll do is I'll go look at 90%, 0.9 as a c. I go find the degrees of freedom, which is 4. I find the intersection of those two, and I get 2.132. That's my answer. Now, you could also do this in your calculator. So I'm going to draw a t distribution. It's kind of similar to the normal, fatter in the tails. Okay, and it's the middle 90%. And I want to know the critical value at this point. So what do? Well, first off, if 90% is in there, that means 10% is not in there. This point below is 90 plus 5, so it'll be 95%. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called inverse t. It's in second bars. And my area is 90% plus 5%, 0.95. And my degrees of freedom is n minus 1, so it'd be 4. So it'd be 2.132. Okay? 95% when n equals 10. So if I'm using my calculator, I'll just find the degrees of freedom, which is 10 minus 1, which is 9. And then for 95%, I'll draw a t curve, similar to the normal curve. If 95% is in this area, that means 5% is not. So that means 2.5% here, 2.5% here. I'm going to do inverse t.
Are you kidding?
My area would be 0.975 because it's 95% plus 2.5%. And my degrees of freedom is 9. 2.262. You could also use your t-table here. Just find 9.95. T-table is actually pretty easy here. Degrees of freedom of 9, 2.262. Okay? 98% when n equals 24. So I'll draw a, whoops, sorry about that. I was trying to draw the fatter tails. So 98% is in there. That means 2% is not in there. So that means 1% is here and 1% is here. Okay? So I'm going to use inverse t. My degrees of freedom is 23. My area is 98%. My critical value is up here. My area is 98% plus 1%, so it'd be 0.99. Degrees of freedom at 23. .499, so it'd be 2.500. Once again, I can do this here. 0.980 for 98%, and then I have a degrees of freedom of 23. 2.50. Finally, 99% when n equals 12, so I'll draw a curve here, 99%. I want the critical value at that point. 99% is in there, that means 1% is not, so that means 1% is going to be split off here, 0.5%, 0.5%. So my area, what's at that point below? 5, 99% plus 0.5%. My degrees of freedom is 11. So I got inverse t. I'm going to do this. 0.995, 11, 3.106. I could also do, once again, I could do 0.99 and 11, 3.106.